So welcome.
Thanks for that introduction, and thank you for having me at AWE, and welcome to this talk about scaling real-life training with VR. My name is Anders Rieping. I'm the CEO of Bublar, and I'm also heading up Bublar Group Enterprise Businesses. I'm a father of three, a business school and entrepreneur, passionate about opportunity, problem solving, and the utilization of new technology. I really appreciate when people in XR tend to speak more about what's actually relevant now rather than what's happening in 2035. So that's also the focus of this talk. So I'd like to share a little bit about our story at Bubbling, my virtual training, about our ecosystem, platform, and product, and also about a case where a client got going. And then we'll have some room for questions toward the end. So at Bubbling, we've been powering the adaptation of XR in business since 2015. So we were convinced, like many others, that XR would revolutionize the world. The technology was finally here, and unfortunately, it wasn't quite there. We're still convinced, though. So Nintendo were even earlier than us with the Virtual Boy in '95. Loads have happened since '95 up until when we founded Bubbling in 2015. I think even more has happened from 2015 to 19 to 20. So with computing power advancing, game engines, standalones, introduction of standalone headsets, and more affordable hardware has made a massive difference. And I think that expectation versus reality is a whole lot different as the '95 as compared to today, where the technology is actually mature and good enough. I think Gartner agrees. VR hasn't actually been on the hype cycle since 2017. Although consumer adoption hasn't quite happened, luckily lots of corporates have stepped into the XR space. So most of our clients are global corporations. They are really, really demanding and only want the best from us. We have done various applications in XR, like training emergency operators. We have developed VR analytical toolkits for eye tracking in VR for Tobii, designed rocket launcher simulators, a wide range of AR applications, etc. The point being is that with 200 XR projects behind us, we've learned what works and what doesn't. And the prime use case in VR today in XR, I think, is virtual training solutions. In this area is where we have done most of our work and where we're now specializing. So just a quick reference to the academia world. So the Edgar Dale Code of Experience, I think, is a really good example of text, PDF, audio doesn't retain knowledge in the way that direct experience actually can. So that's kind of a really, really important, vital part of a virtual training, why it makes sense. Otherwise, I think it's kind of the quality that has to do with learning retention, but also motivation, interactive scenarios, analytics, and feedback. We have efficiency, like about reducing training costs, return on investment, and productivity issues, the sustainability with limited travel, or actually no travel needed at all. And obviously safety, where personnel who train things like hazardous situations and stuff tend to be more safe in their everyday working life, which is obviously very important. And the ongoing pandemic with the coronavirus is also an issue, obviously. And I think that 24/7 accessibility of virtual training and the instructor-less possibilities, and that you don't actually have to gather large groups of people, also make this even more accurate or important as of now. So there's loads of money that is poured into corporate training, and more than actually 90 billion in the US standalone. I'd like to think of, the way virtual training comes to play here is that there are a number of things that we can increase. Like, for example, as mentioned, learning, retention, skill levels, scenario training, these things. There are also loads of things that we can decrease when it comes to costs, travels. And I think this gap is kind of the total effect of virtual training. This is where we find our ROI, safety, value, all these issues. So in essence, virtual training is about virtualizing learning by doing. And this is we have been working on since 2015, basically. And it has to do with that you need to get the content right. So it needs to be really easy to use. You need proper interaction. You need to guide your users and give them feedback. And you also need to keep in mind that corporate staff training is usually about targeting like a wide range, a target group of like 18 to 67-year-olds that are not necessarily ever had like a VR headset on. So content is obviously really important. The next part, which is increasingly becoming important, is scaling learning by doing. And this is, I think, like I'd like to see is, I mean, we and many, many others have developed quite a few proof of concepts, and we have proof of concept. So the next part of virtual training is to kind of reach scalable training, like training solutions. So where you can have like a totally different development speed, if we can have like 10, 20, 30x development speed, we can deploy and scale, and we can also integrate and track and then kind of integrating into clients' IT infrastructure, then we're kind of getting closer to what I believe e-learning is meant for, kind of scaling up and digitizing theoretical learning and knowledge. I mean, VR is the same mechanical vehicle for real life training. And there's actually no reason why these two can't be combined. And I think, in fact, that'll be much more common going forward as well. So we've tried to match this demand from our clients and the market as a whole by designing a virtual training platform. I'll get back to exactly what that means. And on top of the virtual training platform, we're designed specific products. They are aimed to solve a specific problem or solution. And then we have custom educational models that we build on top to kind of match any client needs, but we're also using functionality in the platform to make that scalable and that we can develop these modules at speed. So we have third-party products is also a part of our plan, but it's more long-term, not as of today, but whereas other agencies can actually launch and deploy products on our platform going forward. So just to show a little bit what this is about, we've kind of elected to assemble our own proprietary framework that contains all the libraries and building blocks, design patterns that we need to develop like top-of-the-line VR training solutions. We also have to organize all the subjects for our users. We then have a launcher that keeps track of everything in a neat little library for each user. We always have a backend where we can download applications, user management, these things to make this truly scalable. And we also have the obvious integration to learning management system, which more or less all of our and many other, I think, large corporations work with that have virtual training needs. So this is where we kind of get the user's curriculum, and where we can also export their performance in the virtual training application. And then the last part is the admin portal, where we have like a one-stop interface to manage their organization, submit new applications, and manage users' permissions. And all this kind of comes together to deliver a complete and scalable virtual training solution. So I'd like to speak a little bit about a platform solution here, that with a case with one of our key clients, which is National Railway Operator SJ, and a little bit how they actually got started and dove into this area. So this is kind of where it began. It began with a first workshop, and this is a screenshot from a CAD model of a train that didn't yet exist at the time. So first of all, we had a need to the staff needed to understand what this train looked like, and so did management. So we started out designing a virtual tour of a train that didn't exist. And this is really what caught the management's attention. It's like, wow, can we actually train our staff on a train that and give them access to a train that doesn't actually even exist? Okay, let's push forward and see how we can do that. So we gathered up workshops, we gathered up staff of various types, train drivers, onboard staff, educational personnel, etc. We hosted a number of workshops, and then we also designed a number of prototypes to let them try out. And this kind of paved the way. SJ have trained more than 3,000 employees in Q4 2019 standalone, and they now operate 17 training hubs across Sweden. And this little video gives a little bit of a glimpse of what type of training procedures, etc., that they are working on. So the next part I'd like to just highlight is an example of a product that we are running, and this is the VR Fire Simulator. And this is targeting all companies basically that need fire training for staff. And we offer a premium and cost-efficient fire training where users can extinguish fires. They can use a different type of extinguishers and agents in realistic environments and in real life like scenarios. This is live today in both Sweden and Norway, and it's actually a finalist in the AWE Augie Awards for Best Enterprise Solution. So we're hoping that we can win that thing with this solution. I'm actually going to let Mira and Andreas from our dev team that are behind this product to tell you more about this in this short video.
Fire is dangerous. Everybody knows it, and we don't want to put people in danger if we don't need to. The firefighting simulator is really great for it. In VR, we can come really close to a realistic situation. It can be like a hotel room or an office space or a warehouse. That doesn't really matter. It matches the real thing. It's more cost-effective and sustainable.
We use Fusion 360 to CAD up the parts. After that, we 3D print them and test them out on the actual fire extinguisher. We have 2 track parts. So it's one on the handle and one on the nozzle. Before we used Vive trackers for our first prototype of the fire extinguisher. We're now moving over to the Oculus Quest to get a more portable fire extinguisher. Just like in a real-world scenario, you have to pull out the pin, you have to aim the nozzle and then press down on the handle to get the virtual fire extinguished.
Basically, we can make any mesh, and we put it through a voxelized system. With that, we can really create a realistic fire spreading. So when the node is put on fire, it lights up its own flames with their own particle system that connects to a smoke system that starts to smoke fill the entire room. We have had people like bending down to avoid the smoke and trying to wave it away from the face just to be able to breathe.
So summing up, scaling real-life training with VR is really about virtualizing and scaling learning by doing. The tech is most definitely mature, it's working. Evolving is definitely going to be a part of this race. So thank you very much for tuning in and listening, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have at this point. Thank you very much.
Hi, Anders. This is Rich Ryan from 615. Appreciate your presentation. It was it's really interesting. We had a couple questions pop up, and then of course I have a few of my own. But one of the questions that came up was, how are instructional designers involved in the process of virtual training development?
It depends on what you think you mean with structural designers. The people that have been involved in the kind of training solutions that we have designed have included kind of educational personnel. So the people that have been managing kind of the full blended learning approach that most of our clients use also have kind of been the people that have been, they have helped us, or we have actually helped them together in some type of a collaboration, and then we have worked out what really works. And then it's really, really about kind of understanding the users in this case, because it is fairly new for a lot of, corporate staff, definitely.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions that I have that really struck me was, a lot of times in virtual reality, we do everything in virtual reality, and the fact that you guys have integrated a physical piece of hardware to actually, hold a fire extinguisher, to physically have that feel and look is to me, it's really compelling, right? Because it's one thing to hold your hands out with a virtual fire extinguisher. It's very different when you're holding a piece of physical hardware. And tell me what led you to that, because I think it's something we don't see a lot of, and I think it's it's a really a big differentiator for what you guys are doing versus most virtual training environments.
But it's kind of one piece of becoming kind of even more immersed, I think. And it started out in 2017 when we built a simulator for a rocket launcher for a big defense company in Sweden, Saab. And that gave us a lot of insight in how it's done, and that it actually really works very well, and how we can do it. And then we visited and we got to know a client, a Norwegian railway operator who's called V. And after that, we saw what they were using for their fire training, and we're like, hey, this is going to work a whole lot better. And then it was basically a pitch, and could look at this is what we've been doing in virtual training, and this is actually what can be done. And then they just got really, really keen on the idea, because their simulators hadn't been working very well. So we actually replaced that with what we built.
Yeah, that's really. I think, you know, blending virtual reality training with physical hands-on component to that is, like I said, I think it's fairly unique. We don't see a lot of it, and that was it was really compelling to kind of watch that video. So, you know, I really appreciate your time, and it was a great presentation. And if anyone has any questions, obviously feel free to reach out directly to Anders or his company and see if he can help you out. So thank you so much, Anders. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, thank you. I'll post just my email in the chat there. If anybody wants to reach out, then feel free. Be more than happy.
Perfect.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, be good. Be safe.